Hi everyone, it's Lizzie here from Zero to Revenue, and I'm really excited to be joined by Cris from Landbot. Cris, give us a wave.
Hi everyone.
So I just want to give you the chance to introduce yourself, and then I'm going to ask you a little bit more about your story and where Landbot are to date.
All right, so thank you very much for having me. I'm Cris, co-founders of Landbot.io. Landbot is a SaaS tool that helps you build conversational experiences with no pre-knowledge required. And yeah, we're based in Barcelona. We have a team of almost 30 people now. And yeah, excited to tell you more about our story.
Great. So tell us more about what was Landbot originally. Did you start with the idea of what it looks like and feels like now, or was it something else entirely?
Yeah, so it was like 90% something else. Now in 2015, we were 3 people in the team. We had marketing, we had a CEO, and it was me that was in operations. And we identified a trend. So we knew by 2015 that something was changing when it comes to instant messaging. And we knew that we had to do something related to instant messaging. Of course, there was a lot of people doing things in that space, both B2B and B2C. But we thought that we could actually import some models, some profitable models from the United States, in this case to Spain, and that's how we started out. So we got instant messaging, and we decided, all right, so why don't we build a personal concierge through WhatsApp? And that was our very first step in the journey. So we were like, all right, we don't need much, we just need a WhatsApp account. We just need some Excel sheet, and that's it. We can start tracking orders and see if there's any fit. And there actually was. So we started growing. This was like mid 2015. We grew from 3 to like 15 people in 3-4 months. But the reality is that we were really lucky to find a very early stage investor at that time. So we had someone falling in love with our model, with pretty much a lot of cash, and he believed in us and supported us with our very first super small pre-seed round that helped us move the next 6 months. That was our very first business model. So just the WhatsApp web, Google Sheet, and we were managing orders through WhatsApp for everyone, like dinners or travel or things like that. So that's how it all started.
And so what came next?
Sorry, say it again.
What came next in terms of the next iteration? How did you build upon that?
Yeah, so basically we were managing orders. So I was in operations. I had a team of 8 to 10 people just managing orders on WhatsApp. But the problem was scale. So all our processes were really manual. We had little to no automation at all. We were thinking about artificial intelligence, things like that. But when you're 8, 7 people in the team, you don't have the resources, it's like impossible. So at the beginning it was like, yeah, let's think about cool technologies like AI, like machine learning, deep learning. But when it comes to actually solving someone's problem, it doesn't really matter how much technology you have in the background. It's about what you can accomplish in the short time. So we decided we evolved a little bit our operations. So instead of having WhatsApp web and a Google Sheet, and that was pretty much it, we built our very own platform to manage those orders. And that was a big shift. So we weren't able to scale because it was super costly for us to keep hiring more and more people. So we decided, all right, we got a really cool platform to talk through instant messaging to our customers. And why don't we sell this to other companies that might be interested in having these conversations on their own, just having an account with us and talking to their customers. And the reality was that there was a big need there. There was a lot of customers, a lot of companies that wanted to get rid of email, phone calls, and just wanted to focus on instant messaging. We got big players in the space like Frontend or even Intercom. All those people are on that trend, on that big trend of instant messaging. And we thought, all right, let's try to do this, but focus on WhatsApp. Remember, we're in Spain, so WhatsApp is the big channel here, same as Latin America, some other countries in Europe, but here in Spain it's like crazy big. 95% of people use WhatsApp. So we decided to pivot from a B2C personal concierge on WhatsApp for a B2B SaaS company selling our software to other companies that wanted to talk to their users. And it worked really, really well. It was hard because we went from something like 17 people back to 7 people. Our whole structure changed. It was pretty tough at that time because I had the biggest team there, and I had to make our team understand that we don't need so many resources, human resources by then. And it was pretty tough, but the reality was that we started getting some customers, and we thought that it was the right decision. So we had this second project. It was called Hello Yumi. And that was like the very, very beginning of what Landbot is today. That was in 2016. But then we faced another big problem, and it had to do with our competitive advantage. So all of our product was based on a channel we hadn't had the control over. So it was all about WhatsApp. We weren't offering anything else to our customers. So if you want to use WhatsApp at scale, use Hello Yumi. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of companies doing great things with local developments, with their own products, and they were way faster than us. So when we were talking to investors, they would ask us like, "What's your unfair advantage?" And our unfair advantage was so weak that we were like, all right, we need to think of something built by ourselves that we can scale, that we can fully control. And that's how we started developing our own channel. So we switched from offering just WhatsApp to trying to be a little intercom in space. So we were like, all right, let's build a live chat. Let's do cool things. We know there's a lot of people in this space, but we really believe that with all the knowledge we've acquired over these past months, we can add more value to our current customers. And the reality was that 90% of our customers were still using the other channels like WhatsApp or Facebook, and it was really, really hard to introduce them to our own product. And I mean, they're always going to compare you with other solutions. So it doesn't really matter. We're like 10 people in the team, but people will still compare you to teams of 650 people like Intercom or 500 people like Drift. So that's something that's going to happen. Even though you know you're small, you try to actually give that image of a strong, big team, strong product, crazy features, and they're going to compare your pricing tables, they're going to compare your features, and it's going to be tough. So at that time, we're like, all right, we don't want to rely on WhatsApp only. Our own channel is not working that great. It's just one live chat more. So we were pretty worried about this. We needed to find something that would differentiate us from other competitors. And here comes the fun story. So what happened was that one day, this is a true story, 100% true. So we woke up to our live chat displaying full screen. And it was a real bug that happened. I think it was May 2016. Yeah, 2016 May, almost 2 years ago. So basically, our live chat was displaying full screen, and it was blocking every single of our customers' website. So all of our customers were like, "Yo, visitors cannot do anything on my website because it's blocked by the full screen live chat. Fix this. And we fixed it. It took us like 20 minutes. But the reality was that during that period, it happened to us too. So instead of having a regular website, we had a full screen live chat. And the result was a 27% conversion from visitor to sign up, which is crazy. I mean, if you take benchmarks from SaaS B2B software, I mean, a 27% conversion rate to sign up from visitor is just crazy. So we're like, all right, we might have something here. So instead of having a regular website and a live chat, we had a full screen conversation, and it worked out so well that it was worth the experiment. And that's what we do. We did. We developed the product a little bit, and we started experimenting with it. And if you want to experiment with products, we really recommend 2 different platforms. The first one is Betalist. So Betalist is a marketplace for usually software products that are just starting out and that are looking for some beta users to provide feedback. So we launched on Betalist. It was a big success according to the scale of Betalist. So we decided to move on to Product Hunt, which is the number 2 platform I recommend for validation, for side projects, for small software developments that you want to test with real market. So we launched on Product Hunt, and it was crazy. I mean, I think it was 70,000 people in the first month talking to our Landbots. So it was just an experiment. It was just a full screen conversation, but people loved it. And because people loved it, we decided to even rename our whole company. So it was not anymore a platform to manage different channels, including no, it was just a full screen conversation that was Landbot. And then we had some other channels that were interesting too. And that was in 2017 already when we did that big shift from our second business model that SaaS software with our live chat to Landbot, which is a full screen conversation. And yeah, it was a huge success. So it took us at least 6 months to get our very first 10 customers, but then it took us like another 6 months to reach to almost 600. So as you start growing, when you hear that it's harder to get your first 10 customers than your first 100 or your first 1,000, that's so true. I mean, your very first customer, you'll have to have 6 meetings. You're gonna have to invite them to coffee. You're gonna have to do anything, discounts, promotional codes, everything. But as you start growing, you see that people just go through it. Now we got quite a decent volume of sales every day. So it's always hard at the beginning, but the curve is like this, and it's great when you find that feed, because we're actually solving an issue, and that problem was low conversion rates. So we started out being a convenient concierge on WhatsApp because instant messaging was key. Then we started helping companies interact with their users through instant messaging with our software. And then we provided them with a whole new channel that was just a different paradigm. It was a conversational website, and their conversion rate would skyrocket. And that's where we're at now. So if you want to increase your conversion, you need a Landbot.
So I love your description of how, looking back, it feels like lots and lots of different clear experiments. Okay, one of them was a bug, but still it was an experiment that you could measure the impact. I would love to unpick a little bit more, Cris, about what that experience was like at the time as you were going through those different pinch points. And in terms of the conversations you were having, the difficult decisions and the difficult, you talked about having to let team members go and how that feels. So now I'm sure you look back and you think, well, that was a time we were moving from this direction to that direction. It's quite clear. What did it feel like during it, and how do you kind of find your way?
Yeah, so when we talk about the first part, but like moving from a B2B service to a software company, we just had to do some math. So I remember we were all the 5 founders. We were 5 founders. Having a meeting and just, with some Excel sheet and trying to project some numbers. So we're like, all right, guys, if we want to reach break even, that's not going to happen. I mean, that's not going to happen. If you keep pushing numbers, if you keep growing your team, and if you have no automation like we have today, we won't reach break even like ever. So we have to find a different business model. And the reality was that a couple of users we were providing that service to actually had companies and told us like, hey, how do you manage these conversations? Like, I would really like my business to be able to manage conversations like you do. So it was like 3, 4, or 5 different companies that told us so. And it was just an experiment. So we still had that personal concierge on WhatsApp, but we were like, all right, let's invest some resources. Well, those resources was actually our whole engineering team by then, and tried to make a minimum viable software. And I think it took us like 3, 4 weeks. And let's start having some calls with these customers that told us that they were interested in having this software, and they were. So we got our very first 3, 4 customers in, something like 2, 3 months. And by then, as soon as we had those 3, 4, or 5 customers that were telling us, hey, you really add value to my processes, I'm really making a profit out of using your tool, that's when we decided to switch. So it was not like a decision from one day. Well, it was a one-day decision, but it was not like, all right, let's leave this and let's start with this. We had some simultaneous business models at that time. So that was number one. And number two, it was more natural because we were already a software company. So it was just about communication. This is also key. I mean, if I would have to give a single piece of advice to any early stage founder, it would be communication is everything. So it doesn't matter how good your product is, how many features you have. If you don't communicate them right, it doesn't really matter. It happens to us. I mean, we launch new features every single week. We find customers that spend with us for a year that don't know about those features. And when you tell them, they're like, man, how couldn't you tell me? So it's super important to communicate. So it doesn't matter what you do in your office. It doesn't matter how many engineers you have. If you don't communicate clearly what your product does, which features it has, I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's a customer, a user, a visitor, they want to know. So don't give anything for granted and communicate. And that's what we did with Landbot. So it was not that much of a change in terms of product. It was more a change in terms of communication. So we're still a platform to get closer to your visitors. But now, instead of only having WhatsApp, only having Facebook Messenger, we're giving you this whole new way of communicating, and that's a full page Landbot. So at the beginning, I think it took us 3 months to have more revenue from Landbot than from our previous business model, which took us 12 months to achieve that revenue. So it was a fast overlap. And then, then we just renamed the app, renamed everything, renamed our website. It was hard at the beginning. You know, it's hard for people that's been calling you, hello, in this case, for more than a year to tell, hey, we're now Landbot, and this is what happens. This was also quite complex because you have 10 different websites, 10 landing pages, you have a knowledge base, you have a customer journey, you got everything, and you need to switch that to the whole new concept, which is something similar to the previous one, but it's just different. And that was pretty hard. But again, this was way more, way softer than the previous one. It was just adding a new product and then renaming the whole thing to focus on that.
How do you find it is working with the team in terms of redirecting like that? It sounds like there's often, which makes sense, changes that are built upon customer feedback. Is that something that is a part of each of your team's daily working life, or do you sometimes get a eye roll and what, we're doing something different again, we're going in a different direction? How have you coped with that, and have people been with you the whole step of the way?
Yeah, that's a very, very good one. The reality is that it's always going to be harder to communicate to transmit some reasons why you're doing what you're doing to certain areas. So it's really, really easy for the customer team to understand these. Right now, I'm the head of the customer team. So they're all managing hundreds of requests every day. So they know what the customers are all about, and they know what they need, and it all makes perfect sense, all those product changes and updates. But it's true that for teams like the engineering team that are not that customer faced, sometimes they just think, why? You know, why are we doing this? I mean, it was great. It took me 6 months to build this great app. Why are we changing? And why are we? They say it's a step back, but it's not a step back. And it's super important to communicate them that it's not a step back. It's just a step forward. But it's the whole different thing. So what helped us a lot was sharing feedback from our customers. So we had calls with them, we exchanged emails, we had chat conversations, and it helped us a lot for the whole team to understand where we're going, to share with them all these details. So if you just tell them, hey, we need to stop working on Messenger, let's work on Landbot, but that you say, hey, look at this customer. He's telling us that we completely changed their processes, and now they're converting 20 times more thanks to Landbot. That's where we need to focus in. So yeah, it's always important to keep the customer centric is one of our values. And it sounds great, but it's really hard to bring to the day-to-day of a startup. So constantly talking to your engineering team and sharing real customer feedback and explaining how things are like they are, it's super, super important. But yeah, it's really, really challenging. And we still I got my engineering team here, and we still find some hard times to understand where we're going. Yeah. But I think it's part of the journey.
Definitely. And I would be interested, what have you tried and what have you found works or doesn't work in terms of internal processes around that? So do you have town halls where you talk about a change in direction, or do you have, like you said, customer calls where engineers have to circle in and make sure that they're viewing them, or what kind of internal processes were you doing that?
Yeah, so I think the most relevant one here is our feedback session. So we have what we call a feedback session once a week. It's around 2 hours long, and the whole team meets and different areas share what it's not about product. It's not about features, it's not about MRR. It's just about customers. So we have this session where everyone in the team has to talk about how they felt that week, how they felt we were pushing the product forward, or how they felt that we were solving a problem better to our customers. So this was critical. We've been having these meetings for almost a year now, and it's really important because that's the only time of the week that you'll hear some of the people working in your team. It doesn't matter if you're a 10 people team. I mean, I'm not talking about a 30, 40, 50 people team. Just if you're 5 and you got 1 developer, or you got 1 guy in growth, or you really need to put them together. So I think we got a lot of methodology in terms of daily meetings, sprints, everything. We follow OKRs and things like that. But when it comes to gathering all the areas together, that's the feedback session. That's been every single week happening in our office for 2 hours. If it has to be more, it's more. And yeah, and every time you find a moment to talk to someone that's not in your area, that's not that doesn't have the same responsibilities as you have, it's always great to talk about your reality, especially if it's about the customer. So every time I find a developer, like having a cigarette or having a coffee, I go there and tell, hey, look at these customers. They told us this, they told us that. And they understand better why they're building what they're building.
Right, that makes sense. And I can imagine that the communication within the team is then reflected with how you communicate to your customers, which you spoke about. Do you also have that? You talked about your very early investor and that being a big part of your journey to success early on. How was that in terms of being able to speak about, this is our vision, this is where we're going, when that kept changing? So how did that work?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good one too. The only problem with I mean, it was a huge opportunity. We have to thank our very first investor. If it wouldn't for him, we wouldn't be here. But the reality was that he was not in love with the business model. He was in love with the product, and that's something really important. So if you're selling pizzas, your investor loves pizza. You might think, all right, that's perfect. That's a perfect feed, but it's not. I mean, it's not about liking the same things. It's not about being your target. Your investor doesn't necessarily have to be your target, and ours was. So he was in love with the service, but not really fully understanding the business model. So that was critical, and we had a lot of conversations with him. And at the end of the day, he believed in us. We were showing some consistent figures and explaining, hey, this is not working. This is not going to work. I mean, it's your money, and this is not. I mean, in 18 months we'll be dead if we keep going like this, and we won't find other investors. So why don't we take this step or these other steps? So it's hard. It's hard, but when you're just like months old or 1 year old, it's easier. Right now, if we would have to change our business model, that would be that would be a big fight with our investors. But don't worry about that at the beginning. I mean, if you haven't gone through any funding round or just one, don't worry about that. I mean, your investors will understand. They believe in you. They don't believe in your business model. They do, but what they believe in most is you. So if you make that decision and you think like that, just explain it to them. Explain it to them and they will understand. And if they don't, they're not the investor you want to have. So that's like that. And if you want to just sleep out of the company and maybe not in terms of equity, but in terms of daily operations, they might have to do so. But it's important to be really aligned with your investors and explain things just like how you see them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would love to hear more about where Landbot are now, having explained the changes in business model direction, and you're talking about your team growing. So what has been the update with investment and with product, and where are you going, and what are the challenges next for you guys?
So, sorry, we were born in Valencia, in Spain, and we moved to Barcelona like 7 months ago already, because we closed our latest funding round back in June 2018. It was a 2.2 million round, and that allowed us to grow from 10 people. We're 28 now. We're all based here in Barcelona. And right now, everything goes slower. You know, as you grow, you realize that you're way slower than you were 6 months ago. So what we're doing right now, we're focusing on we had to build things super fast to be where we are now. And if you build things fast, well, you need to go back and rebuild them and rethink about them and talk to your customers and ask them for feedback instead of what you thought it was the right thing. So right now we're on that point. So we got an interesting customer base where you have more than 1,000 paying customers. And right now, what we want to focus on, we know that this product is going to work because there's already some significant beats. So we need to keep making it more and more consistent. This is really important too because sometimes you build a product and you want to do things fast and cost effective, and I don't really care if this logo looks different from this other logo or this color, or there's a little bug when you click there and then it moves like this. But as you grow, you need to fix all that stuff. You need to have a really, really consistent platform, or things just won't buy. People just won't buy because they're going to compare you with best in class. So right now we're polishing every single aspect of the platform. Instead of bringing new features, we're trying to have a very, very consistent product that works, that has no bugs. We have a crazy fight against bugs, but it's super hard. So right now we are there. So we want to keep building our product, not in terms of making it bigger, but making it more consistent and more stronger. And we would like to close our next funding round this summer. So we are on our way to increase our MRR significantly. We're right now at around 60,000 MRR, and we'd like to grow to 100 by summer, and that would help us go for our next funding run. And time will tell. I believe that with the next funding run, we'll be able to explore new product lines. So this is very frequent. So you start with something really, really specific. Just try to solve one thing. And then as you have the resources, then you can have different products. So we all want to be Zendesk with 6 different products, and all of them are great. But when it comes to starting up, just focus on one single thing. If you have to be a plugin, be a plugin. If you have to be a Chrome extension, be a Chrome extension. I wish we would have been a Chrome extension back then, because the cost is way lower and everything's faster. So don't worry about being a big company with a lot of products. Just focus on having one single product that does things great. That's the main advice here. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your advice and for sharing your journey. I just wondered if you wanted to finally describe where Landbot is, what Landbot is doing right now, and then we can round up and tell everyone to go check it out.
All right. So so Landbot is this superpower for your website. So if you want to increase your conversion, you need a Landbot, and that's where Landbot is at now. So Landbot is finding different ways of optimizing your conversion funnel. Doesn't matter where you take it from. So yeah, I think that's it. So we're helping companies make website experience more engaging and therefore converting more. Landbot it's just there, just having that Swiss knife for your website, someone would say, and helping you get more from your visitors or from your current users. So that's it.
Landbot. So thank you so much. That is Cris, co-founder of Landbot.io, and we really appreciate your time today. And I'm sure people can reach out and get in touch if they want to ask you any more questions.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks.